Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of DawgDial, the show where we talk about University of Georgia football, basketball, recruiting, and much, much more. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my trusty co-host, Dave McMahon, and Jake Roos of UGASports.com, and we're at Champions Chicken on Baxter Street here in Athens, where the food is amazing and the drinks never run dry. Jake, the Dogs added DeMarcus Hayes, a four-star JUCO offensive tackle, and the vault over on UGASports.com went crazy when they heard the news.
Yeah, it was a little bit up and down. I missed a lot.
Correct.
So, roller coaster of emotions to start.
Potentially he could start, right?
There's
Yeah.
no question about it. I think that you're looking at a guy who's going to come in and tackle spot.
Sounds like something we're going to touch on in the rest of the show. And Dave, we got another great show lined up. We're going to recap all the recent official visitors that were in Athens this past weekend. Some offensive lineman by the name of Isaiah Wilson from the Big Apple took his official visit this past weekend. And we have some breaking news on his recruitment we'll discuss on this episode as well. But not only will we have those updates and more, but this is our last show for the 2016 year. And we're going to make sure we go out with a bang. Isn't that right, Dave?
Exactly right. I mean, you mentioned Isaiah Wilson. I mean, I was in New York as well for. I did not get to see that guy because you know why? Because he was down here.
Exactly.
Visiting. I was up there in New York with a College Football Hall of Fame induction, and then a couple days later, I was there in Baltimore, Maryland, for the last Army game / last Vern Lundquist college football game. But I'm glad to be back here with you guys, and I'm glad to be back here at Champions.
Exactly. And, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Make sure to stay with us. We've got a great show for you this week. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGASports.com. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my co-host, Dave McMahon, and Jake Roos of UGASports.com. And, guys, we touched on it in the show open a little bit. A big weekend, this past weekend for Georgia in terms of official visitors. And looks like Georgia got some good news. Not as much good news as they wanted. Monty Rice obviously committing to LSU instead of Georgia, which I think everybody thought for a second he was all dog, especially after the visit. Kind of took a turn to LSU, but the good news for Georgia, DeMarcus Hayes, four-star offensive tackle, JUCO kid, he's a big old boy.
Yeah.
You know, and I think Georgia really needed him, and I know you thought that they did. He was number one on your most wanted list you put out a couple weeks ago, and Georgia got him.
There's really no question in my mind that you needed to restock at running back in case Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, end up declaring for the NFL draft like many people believe that they will. But, otherwise there weren't a ton of positions that were just must-haves. It was going to be building the depth, Kirby and those guys getting guys that they wanted in.
Yep.
The one position that you had to have a commit at, the one position that mattered the most was on that offensive line. I thought you had to bring in a JUCO offensive tackle. The reason being you're losing both Greg Pike and Tyler Catalina in this offseason. Two huge losses. Obviously, I know people gave both of those guys read them their rights this year, but you had to have somebody come in and fill them in because there was not a clear option behind them.
No.
So to get a guy who's experienced, to get a guy who has the size that Sam Pittman's looking for, to get a guy, I think the most impressive and the most valuable thing about him is that unlike Tyler Catalina, this is a guy who comes in with 3 years to play 2. And what I mean by that is he could take a red shirt, let's say if he's not ready, or maybe he's got a medical condition at some point. God forbid, for Georgia's sake.
You don't want to use that red shirt.
They need him to come in and play those 2 years off the bat and go to the league.
Yeah.
But the 2 years is a big deal. I think that's a really key thing for Georgia. They needed some guys to come in that had some experience. And I think that DeMarcus Hayes fills that perfectly. Impressive job by Sam Pittman recruiting a kid out of Mississippi who grew up a Mississippi State fan. Mississippi State was named his leader at one point, very recently, in fact. And so for him to do the sell job that you needed to do and basically secure the guy you needed, all props in the world to him. You had to have DeMarcus Hayes, and you got him, and that's a big deal.
Dave, for you, what does that feel like to you? I mean, you got a guy that comes in, Catalina and Pike both gone.
Both of them gone, and like you said, the 2 years is important because if he was only good for 1 year,
You're in
what?
the
We had to do
same
the thing
situation.
Exactly.
over the following year. So I mean, having him for 2 years is huge, and we've mentioned it several times in the past. That the tackle positions is so important for Georgia right now because people are saying maybe put Isaiah Wynn out there, but if you do Isaiah Wynn out there, then you have another position you have to fill wise. But I think having a guy in Hayes' size will be perfect for the tackle position, and then maybe if we get another tackle, that's even better.
Well, speaking of other tackles that Georgia's pursuing, obviously there was one that was also in town with DeMarcus Hayes. He was getting a ton of love. You saw it all over Facebook, Twitter, all over UGAsports.com. Isaiah Wilson. The man, the myth, the legend, and when I say this kid looks like a grown man, in pictures with other kids that look like grown men, like Andrew Thomas and Notori Johnson and those guys, and he's towering above them.
They look like this big next to them.
And I'm 6'3", 185 pounds. I've stood next to Notori Johnson. Notori Johnson would swallow me. So
like whole.
Yes. Oh yeah. Like
Like a snake.
Yes.
He would.
Exactly. Just absorb me.
like us at Champions Chicken.
Exactly. But you saw Isaiah Wilson stand there, and you're like, good Lord, this is a giant.
He might be able to swallow Notori.
Yes,
I mean that's
the difference.
You're talking about our Trent Smallwood over at UGAsports.com reported, the intel that he was hearing said that the measurements came back on this kid this weekend. You're talking about 6'7", 370. And I'm talking about not a kid who's walking around with a gut hanging out.
No.
This is solid. I'm not going to say it's all muscle because I don't think you can be 370 of all maybe you
Correct.
can.
Yeah.
I don't know. But this kid is massive. He's very talented. I do think he's a little bit more of a project than some people might think he is. And so I think that he's got some things to learn. I don't know that he's going to step in and just kill that left tackle spot.
I still think
right
he
off
would be
bat.
the best left tackle if he was on the roster right now.
Even with DeMarcus Hayes committed.
Okay, I take that back. DeMarcus Hayes and Wilson would be the two best guys to fill those positions.
That's kind of my thought.
Yeah.
And the other consideration I think for me is perhaps you have a situation where Hayes ends up panning out as your left tackle. You've got a situation where you can put Wynn maybe over at right tackle, which is a little easier job. And you've seen him work at left; he does a very good job there. You've got your guards taken care of. You've got some guys that
you got tons of guards
around there. And then, probably Lamont Galliard at center. So I think that that's an ideal situation. I do believe that it's a situation, though, with Wilson that you'd love to have him. Everybody on earth would.
Oh, yeah.
He's a more developed, in my opinion, Ben Cleveland. And I know people love to talk about Ben, and it's taken Ben some time to kind of come around, I think, on the game. And
Ben's
really,
also really young, too.
Exactly.
So
Isaiah's not as young, but he's got that same physical mold. If you're talking about this whole idea that Sam Pittman wanted to bring in size and these mammoth guys, to get Ben Cleveland, Isaiah Wilson, Notori Johnson, Justin Schaefer, Solomon Kinley, you're done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You've got a ton of man on the line.
A literal ton.
Literal ton.
Yes. And Dave, I'm going to bring you in here for just a second. Isaiah Wilson, another huge tackle that Georgia's needing. What are your quick thoughts on that? And I mean, do you see both those guys if Wilson was able to step in? Obviously had a great visit. There's a lot of speculation about where he's going to end up. But with both those guys stepping in, you might be good.
I mean, you've seen in the past, like many years ago, that a left tackle of the future maybe start out at right tackle, like you're saying, with putting Hayes at left tackle in the beginning, and then maybe by year 2, switching over from right tackle to left tackle and being the key guy for 2, 3.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. When was the last time you remember somebody doing that at Georgia?
I remember the Stinchcombs doing that. But both of that, I remember that happening.
Hey, those guys were all right.
Yeah, they're pretty good. And then years later, let's see. Well, like I said, before that, Bernard Williams did that.
This
for
guy's
Georgia.
incredible.
And then after it was a hodgepodge of guys. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, anyway, we're gonna touch on
some
more recruiting. We're gonna touch on some more recruiting when we come back from the break. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGAsports.com.
Because you want more flavor, at Nuke's we marinate and grill to perfection. Because you want the latest culinary tastes and trends, we never rest. At Nuke's, great food drives us. So we are meticulous in our preparation, obsessed with the quality of our ingredients, and uncompromising about serving you our very best. We believe that sharing a memorable meal is one of life's ultimate pleasures. Join us at Nuke's Eatery.
And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my co-host, Dave McMahon, and Jake Roos of UGASports.com. And, guys, we're sitting at Champy's Chicken, Athens, Georgia, Baxter Street, with some of the best food around. We've got a chicken tender plate on the table right in front of us, smelling amazing.
It's not going
French
to last
fries.
long.
No, it's not. It's really not. But, guys, if you weren't with us in the previous segment, make sure you're bringing your unwrapped toys down here at Champy's. Josh and Amy Collins do an amazing job each year of doing the Toys for Tots. They're doing it right now, so definitely stop by. Bring your unwrapped toys. Come get some of this food. And whenever you're in, ask for Josh, and he will come talk with dogs with you all day long, all night long. Yeah, I mean, all lunch, all dinner, whatever. Just ask for Josh and mention you're a Bulldog fan. Come on by. But, guys, we touched on Isaiah Wilson, DeMarcus Hayes, two big-time names that were in official visits to Georgia this past weekend. Also another big name that kind of popped out of nowhere. We discussed him last week, Lonnie Johnson.
Yeah.
Obviously a big guy. You saw the pictures come out of the tweets and things like that with him standing with Mel Tucker. He's a huge defensive back, 6'3", all of that. And he's also announcing. So it's a pretty big week for Georgia in terms of getting commitments, potentially getting commitments, being in the race for guys that are high-profile guys. And we talked about it last week, Jake. JUCO kids, you don't hear about them during the season. They're creating their film. They're creating their resume, so to speak. Now is the time you start hearing about them, and just so happens there's a really good one that might be potentially committing to the Dogs.
Yeah, and we talked about Johnson, like you said, last week, so I don't want to go too much in depth. A couple quick hitters on him. At one time, Ohio State commit, was later an Western Michigan commit. From Gary, Indiana, plays his ball, I believe, out of Garden City Community College, if I'm not mistaken. Lonnie is 6'3", 185, 190, big, fast, physical. That kid has instincts, and I'll tell you what, the biggest thing about him, I think that's going to allow him to be successful over the course of a college career when he hits this next level, is his hips. Yeah, that kid for 6'3", I mean, he weaves through defenses and offensive lines. He's like a point guard. I mean, he's pivoting all around all the time.
How does that go again?
Just like that. Yeah, and he's an outstanding player in that regard. I think that he brings some things to the table that Georgia doesn't necessarily have, and one of them is size. And Georgia has sold week in and week out. They play these big physical receivers. You saw it against every team they played all year. Hey, it wouldn't have been nice to have maybe some giant defensive back there against Tennessee. That's what I thought. So I think overall, Lonnie brings that infusion. They want to get bigger at every position, but there's a need for it there. They've got some guys who are not undersized. I mean, I don't mean to say that, but they're not the biggest guys in the world, and you're going against guys. The receiver game has changed.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
The receiver game has changed. You're talking about guys who are, coming in and regularly playing around the 6'4", 6'5". Guys who used to be considered tight ends are coming out and running these incredible times and, have incredible hands and making it to the league. Guys like Mike Evans playing in Tampa Bay used to play at Texas A&M. That's the new standard. That's what everybody wants. You've got to stock the core in the defensive backs to take care of those guys because I love a guy like Mecole Hardman. I love a guy like Terry Godwin. But the fact of the matter is sometimes height wins out.
Jake, I also want to touch on another JUCO prospect that visited as well. JUCO defensive lineman, does he ring a bell?
Rasheem Collins.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Been kind of quiet with Rasheem thus far. I am expecting to hear something on him soon. Not exactly sure what we're going to hear or when we're going to hear it. But, a guy who is vying for an offer and a guy who I personally think is a very good candidate to get one. Especially, we talked about missing on Monty Rice early in the show. If you have some opportunities and you've got a guy who's eligible for a scholarship, I think that Rasheem's a great option for you. You're talking about a kid from Ware County, Georgia, down there in Waycross, a kid who has an 80-inch wingspan.
It's unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah, that's like freakish huge.
That's from here to the bathroom.
Yeah. Yes. You're talking about 6'1", 296, and the thing about him is he's not the biggest cat on earth. He's not the tallest guy I've ever seen. he's not the just dominating
Yeah, he doesn't.
physical.
He doesn't look it.
But the film is crazy,
Correct.
man. He comes in like a wrecking ball.
And again, that whole JUCO thing, we haven't heard about him that often, and then they get that resume out. Jake, I want to ask you one more question before I shift the focus over to Dave and kind of talk about some stats for the Liberty Bowl coming up. But have you seen with this new staff an increase in JUCO offers, or is it just they're really in the fold for more JUCO guys this year?
I think that what they want to do, I think that they feel like probably after this 2016 season that they've got a lot of pieces that can get you some success over the next year or two. Jacob Eason can play ball. That the freshman you saw on the defensive line can play ball.
Yep.
Isaac Nott is a guy who can play. Brian Harrion showed some good things. They need an infusion of talent quick because Kirby knows this isn't a situation where he can sit around
Correct.
and
We discussed that.
7-8 years to kind of get the system in place. He's got about 3 years,
Yeah.
so he better get it on track quick. He better get it back where he wants it quick. And if he's not able to do that, then he's going to have some problems. So that's where experience plays in.
I think it also plays into the fact that he knows he doesn't have those upper-level guys, and those weren't his guys, so he wants to bring in some upper-level guys that are his guys.
Absolutely.
And you're seeing that now. And, Dave, I kind of want to shift over. We've been talking heavy recruiting. Sorry to leave you out on that. I know that's not your take, but you weren't here last week when we discussed the Liberty Bowl a little bit. What are some stats that you've got for us in terms of Georgia versus TCU? I'm just going to let you run with it, man, because this is what people listen for.
Well, first of all, I want to go backtrack just a second ago when you talked about Collins and junior college, and hopefully if Georgia ends up getting him, I mean, the name Odell Collins was a former JUCO that Georgia got that did not pan out well. Hopefully if Georgia gets this Collins, it'll be a lot better. So when I hear the name Collins and junior college, I get a little tense, but hopefully it's a little bit better if Georgia ends up getting him. Okay, I want to talk about the Liberty Bowl. Georgia is 1-2 in Liberty Bowls. I mean, they've been in the Liberty Bowl 3 previous times. They're 1-2, which is not that good. Georgia's only been 3 bowl games that they've lost more than 1 bowl game, and the Liberty Bowl is one. The Chick-fil-A Bowl / Peach Bowl, whatever you want to call it, and the Sugar Bowl, they've lost more than 1, and Liberty Bowl is another one they've lost more than 1. The first time they ever been with the Liberty Bowl was 1967 against NC State. They lost 14-7 in that game. The quarterback for NC State was a guy named Jim Donnan back then. So
Really?
So it's now go full circle
heard
with
of
that. Yeah, there you go. And then we also in that game it was kind of sad because Georgia lost by 7. They had a 98-yard drive that got stopped by barely by inches. So maybe a little bit more push. So maybe it's not just this year's problem. It was back in 1967 as well with Vince Dooley's leading team. The next time Georgia played TCU was, in the Liberty Bowl was 1987. Georgia was victorious in that game. Freshman John Casey kicked the game-winning field goal, 39 yards at the buzzer or at the last play of the game for the victory. Georgia won 20-17. They were down 17-7 late in that game, and they came back to win 20-17. So kudos for that. And the last time, a lot of Georgia fans don't like to remember this, but in 2010, a few years back, Georgia lost 10-6 against Central Florida, which was a miserable offensive game for Georgia. I mean, you had Murray, you had AJ Green, and they couldn't do anything offensively, and they lost 10-6. That was the last time Georgia finished under 500 in the season. It's the only time they've done that in the last 20 years. Prior to that, the last time they were under 500 was 1996, led by Jim Donnan.
So you've got Liberty Bowl stuff. Now, what about TCU? When was the last time Georgia faced TCU, and what are you seeing from that TCU offense right now?
Okay, well, TCU, just like the Liberty Bowl 3 matchups, Georgia faced TCU 3 times in the past. The last time was 1988. Georgia won pretty handily, 38-10. Tim Worley, big 77-yard big run, and Georgia pretty much dominated. That was Tim Worley's second longest run of his career. The first one, as many Georgia fans remember, was in 1985 against Florida when he had 89 yards in that one run, which is still the longest run in Georgia history. So the 77 was his second longest TD run, and that happened against TCU. The time before that, Georgia played TCU was in 1980. That was a pretty good year for Georgia fans.
It was.
And Georgia won 34-3. But the crazy thing in that game, Herschel Walker got hurt in that game. He had 9 carries for 69 yards and 0 TDs. He hurt his ankle by landing awkwardly on a face mask. I mean, I guess the guy was lying on the ground and ankle met face mask, and Herschel did not play after the first quarter. But still, he had 69 yards, which is I mean, can you imagine what you would have for the full game
Jeez.
if he did that? So he had 9 for 69. The 9 carries was the only time in Herschel's career that he had under 10 carries in a game for his 3-year career for the Bulldogs. And the other time Georgia played TCU was in 1942. It was the 1941 season, but 1942 Orange Bowl. It was Georgia's first ever Orange Bowl season, first ever bowl game ever as a team. They were they won very handily. They had scored 40 points. Frank Sinkwich scored 3 TD passes and a touchdown rush, but that wasn't his Heisman Trophy season. The year after was his Heisman, so it's a little preview of his Heisman. This year, TCU doesn't have as much stuff. They're 6-6. They started preseason ranked just like Georgia. They're not anymore, but a name that most people remember on the current Texas A&M TCU team was former Texas A&M quarterback Kenny Trill-Hill.
Yes.
He's now the guy there. He threw a lot of interceptions this year compared to touchdowns, but he's still dangerous whenever he has the ball.
What's your thoughts on the game, Dave?
I think Georgia could pull it out. I think towards the end of the year, obviously that Georgia Tech game was very struggling, but Georgia had a little niche. They had a good core between Easton and some of the young people that he's going to be throwing to the future. And this could be Nick Chubb's going away thing. It could be Sony Michel's going away. Both of them have had very good bowl games in the past.
Yeah, and Dave bringing the knowledge right there with the stats.
fire.
Liberty Bowl, you name it. You want to know what Georgia did? Dave's got you. You want to see how they've done against TCU? Yeah, let's go back to 1980. Let's talk about it there. That's why we have Dave McMahon on this show, guys. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Dave_MC_stats. He's got all the knowledge. He pumps it on there. Guys, we're going to pump some more knowledge to you guys after the break. We're going to talk about Georgia's season in general. We're wrapping up for DawgDial. This is our season finale. Make sure to stay with us. You listen to DawgDial, presented by UGAsports.com. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by Dave McMahon and Jake Roos, both co-hosts of the show and both part of UGAsports.com staff. Guys, we're here at Champy's Chicken on Baxter Street. Toys for Tots is going on right now. Make sure if you stop by to drop off some unused toys, unwrapped toys for Josh and Amy Collins to donate to Toys for Tots. It's a great charity that they are involved with, and you also can eat some incredible food, which we've got here right now. The fries, chicken tenders, unbelievable, guys. They've got so much more, though, that you can stop by. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter. I'm at P. Meharry. Jake is at Roos Recruiting. Dave, we've already shouted Dave out. We'll do it again, though. It's at Dave_Mick_stats. And then also follow the show's handle at DAWGDIAL. Guys, this is our final show for the season before we come back on January 10th, our final show for 2016. And we haven't done a full recap of the season. I know we kind of discussed it a little bit, Jake. But January 1, Kirby Smart was already in charge. He was making his way over to Athens. He was still helping out with Alabama. He was kind of pulling double duty with that. We're now on full into December. And what are your thoughts on the program? And I know it's kind of a deep subject, so we'll try to keep it, as lighthearted as possible. But what were some of the things that you saw, good, bad, in between, and how do you think this program's progressing? Is it regressing? Those are the questions I've got. I think we're all going to kind of answer that as we go along, but I want to get your take first.
Well, first off, I will say that I fell in the camp of people who thought it was time to make a change. I did think that some fresh blood would benefit Georgia in a big way. So I'll go ahead and get that out of the way and say, I'm unbiased as a journalist, but it made sense to make the move.
Yep.
Now that Kirby's here and you've had a year to kind of watch it, it's been very interesting, and that's probably how I describe the whole year.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. He's made some huge, huge changes, and I think that it's going to take more than a year to see how those things actually pay off. But, in year one, the big thing that stands out for me, and this is because I cover recruiting, is that Dog Night went away.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. I think that, the focus on moving these official visits and getting these guys up here and coming to games and coming on off weeks where coaches can focus all their energy on them. From the recruiting standpoint, that's been easily the most interesting thing for me. I think that they've made that such a priority, and I think that it's ended up paying some dividends, I have to say. I think that I published their most wanted list over on UGAsports.com the other day. It was just the guys that I thought, made the most sense and would best benefit Georgia. But I think that at this point, 3 of them have committed, and the other 7 are still on the board. Now, I'm not feeling confident about all of them, but I do think that it signifies that they've got clear targets in mind, and for the most part, they're getting them. Did they get Monty Rice? No, but that's going to happen. And it wasn't like you lost him to Auburn or Alabama.
Correct, yeah.
You lost him to LSU. So, it's been, I think, interesting. That's the word I keep going back to. It's almost an unrecognizable program, in my opinion.
Dave?
And you said interesting. I say another I word. I say inconsistent. And it's basically throughout the whole year. They did very good in recruiting, but they didn't do great. They did very good at times during the season in playing wise, and then times they did not do great. It's some aspects good, some bad. I mean, it was never felt like Georgia was growing in the same pace year after year, game after game. Excuse me. So many games. I mean, Georgia finished 7-5 this year. They had 7 games that they were within a single-digit points. So they could have been 3-9 this year. They could have been 9-3. They could have been 10-2. So anything could have happened. How about this? I mean, 7 times they've been single digits. Here's a little stat going back a little bit more. 13 of the last 20 games, Georgia's been a single digit. So many close games. It drives Georgia fans nuts. It drives me nuts. But yes, it's very frustrating being a Georgia fan sometimes, and it just showed just because nothing moved like as well as it should have been for Georgia fans. But I think it's going to move forward. Getting a tackle is huge. I think Georgia is going in the right direction just because in the last few games it seemed like Eason was hitting the people the new guys. It seemed like he was hitting Wims. He was hitting Ridley. He was hitting Nauta. So it looked like that area was moving upwards. Georgia will always have a good running game with Harry and Holyfield looking good and a plethora of good running backs coming next year. And Georgia's defense looked good towards the end of last year as well. So hopefully everything is moving upwards. I think so. I don't think it's as bad as some people say, but I think it's going to be definitely improved if they keep on doing what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I think, guys, I think it was a weird year, and I think interesting and inconsistent kind of bring it all together.
Yeah.
That's what it was. People had really high hopes for Kirby Smart, probably higher hopes than what any man should have to face in his first head coaching job. But that's the price you pay. You come to Georgia, that you're getting that type of criticism off the bat. You're expected to come in and be an elite level talent, especially if you had Mark Richt at UGA for so long. With that being said, just like Jake, I think it was time for a change, and Georgia did that. They knew that the guy they wanted to get was Kirby Smart. There were other options out there that people will beat to death until the cows come home. Tom Herman was available, things like that. I think Kirby was the right man for the job. Now, he's going to have to really change his program around in year 2. That's where you see the most change from programs is the coaches have been there now for almost a full year. It's now bringing in their guys. You're going to be able to see what they can do. I think the thing that have Georgia fans struggling the most with all of this, though, is the coaching in-game strategies and things like that really seem to kind of put Georgia behind. You could tell that it was a first-year head coach making some of those calls. Those things have to be corrected moving forward because there's not a lot of time, and I think Georgia fans and boosters and the like, athletic department, realize that Georgia has a plethora of talent in-state, and they've got to be able to capitalize on that. Georgia's talent-ridden, and they don't have a team in the state that really recruits on their level. They have other teams that come in. So I think that's where Georgia's looking at now. So all in all, interesting, inconsistent, perfect adjectives for it because
Weird was pretty good.
Weird, yeah, it was a weird season, and I think people had a lot more higher expectations than what Kirby should have been coming in with. But at the same token, he didn't produce up to the level that I thought that he was going to.
Georgia, a lot of fans thought they were going to be like 9-3 or so, or 8-4. They were very close to that number. But just the path to get there was not the way the Georgia fans wanted.
I think if you can finish up with this game against TCU and get a win, I think it's going to put a lot of momentum into next season. Guys, when we come back, we're answering a ton of recruiting questions from the chat line. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGAsports.com.
Because you want more flavor, at Nukes we marinate and grill to perfection. Because you want the latest culinary tastes and trends, we never rest. At Nukes, great food drives us. So we are meticulous in our preparation, obsessed with the quality of our ingredients, and uncompromising about serving you our very best. We believe that sharing a memorable meal is one of life's ultimate pleasures. Join us at Nukes Eatery.
And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my co-hosts, Dave McMahon and Jake Roos of UJSports.com. Guys, we've already had a jam-packed show. It's our season finale. We'll be back January 10th. But at the same token, we've had a great show. Recruiting questions, guys that were already on campus. We touched on the year in review.
And we're also at Champy's Chicken here in Athens, Georgia, and that's what makes the whole thing work.
Exactly.
We got the delicious tenders. We got some fries. They're doing the Toys for Tots.
Yes.
Get down here. Have yourself a 40-ounce.
Say hi to Josh, too.
Yeah,
Josh
hi to
and
Josh.
Amy, yeah. But, Jake, I know that we had a ton of questions coming on the text line about recruiting. I know we already touched on some of the stuff, but that was more conversation brought on by us. This is brought on by the fans of the show. So what are they having to say? And let's discuss a little bit of those questions.
Brent Feemster is a guy who has been consistent with asking the questions. So, Brett, I'm coming to you. He says, is Aubrey Solomon going to UGA?
Ooh, that's a tough one, Jake.
Boy, howdy, do they hope so. That's what I will say to that. Aubrey is the clear number one defensive lineman in the state of Georgia. One of the best in the nation. We just named him a 5-star over at Rivals.com. I do think that Georgia stands a very good chance with him. I think that, the in-state factor plays huge with him. I think his mom probably wants him to play close to home. I think that the family, the community would like to see that. The other options, probably Michigan, they're pushing really hard. Watch Auburn down the stretch, too. That's another team that I'm keeping close eyes on. You know that those guys kind of rise up toward the end for these
Georgia fans hate hearing that about defensive line.
I know that, but you can't forget that Lee County is down there, almost right on the border. I mean, that's not exactly Bulldog territory. Mm-hmm. So keep an eye on those Auburn Tigers. I think that they're going to create some mischief for the Georgia Bulldogs down the line.
In the end, you think he's in Athens? I'm not going to try to put you on the spot. You cannot hold Jake to this, guys. But
hold him down to it. Come on.
Yeah.
Do I think he'll be there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
I think so,
in the end, I do. I think that Georgia's got to get him on campus in January.
Yep.
I think they've got to get him in before signing day.
Yep.
And I think that they've just got to continue doing what they've done. And then that's just pitching him on what he can do in Athens.
And he's really, really good.
He's so good.
Yes.
He's so sick good. If they get him, it's probably the second biggest victory in my mind at this point.
Oh, yeah.
I believe he's number 2 on my list right now of needs. DeMarcus Hayes was number 1 because of his experience. But Georgia kind of whiffed last year on their most elite defensive line target, which was Derek Brown. Aubrey offsets a little bit of that for you.
Sure does. What other questions you got?
Travis Powell, good question here, says, what about Marcavius Bryant, the DLD, outside linebacker? He does a little bit of it all.
Yeah.
Marcavius,
the big cat.
Yeah, the big cat, absolutely. Marcavius is a kid that I'm going to say, comes down to a Georgia-Auburn battle. Florida's right there, too. They're lurking. But I think that the relationship – I'll tell you this. If Georgia wins that battle, you need to give big credit to Kevin Scherer. Because he's the guy who's led the charge on Marcavius, and he's done so for a very, very long time. He's made a very concerted push for that kid, and I think that he's a kid that fits in well with what they do. This was a kid that we're talking about. I'm not kidding. 1 year ago, he had almost no offers.
Yeah.
This kid
looks great.
Yeah, this kid has 35 plus at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the best in the nation at this point. I think that Cordele, again, it's a little bit south. It's kind of down in that Auburn, Georgia territory where the lines start to blur and the allegiances start to change. And Florida's still in there too, but I do think Georgia has a very, very strong chance to land Marcavius Bryant.
And I think Marcavius Bryant would kind of help offset some of those fans that aren't so high right now in terms of Monty Rice heading to LSU, even though they kind of play a little different position. I think Marcavius Bryant's film is just absolutely incredible. There's a reason they call him the big cat, Dave.
How many We talked about offensive linemen, how big these guys are, defensive line, how big they are. I mean,
It's changing the game.
yeah, size matters
Yes.
in terms of recruiting. Jake?
All right. I got one 2018 question that I'm going to finish things
nice.
up on. And thank you for giving me that because it gives me some time before signing day in 2018.
Yes.
Do you think UGA pushes for QB Justin Fields down the stretch? I know he's committed to Penn State. That's Dylan Smith. I'm going to tell you this. I think that Georgia's going to re-enter that sweepstakes. I think there's a long time to go for Fields. I think his family made it pretty abundantly clear early on, and once he got the offer, that that's a place they'd like to see him play. I think they were a little dismayed that Georgia maybe didn't pursue as heavily as they would have liked initially. Yeah. Meanwhile, James Franklin and the Nittany Lions came down, made the kid a priority, and I think that he wanted to move on that and show that he was going to go to the team that loved him the most.
And they had a ton of momentum going.
The thing is, you're talking about it at a time when you're a year and a half out of signing day.
Yep.
It's too far away to say that this thing's over for Justin Fields. So I don't think that it's a question of, will he or won't he. I think, is he solid to Penn State? Yeah, probably right now. Do I think that Georgia will make another run? I could definitely see it.
If Georgia does lose out on the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, whenever that is going to happen, I could definitely see Justin Fields becoming a huge name for Georgia.
Sure.
If Trevor Lawrence
He already
goes elsewhere.
is.
Yeah, oh, yeah. His tape is incredible. He's a guy that kind of shot up out of nowhere. Our own Dan McDonald's been covering him for a really long time up there at Harrison. And I think, just like Jake said, that's not over. But I think Georgia wants to see about that Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. And if, for whatever reason, they don't get him, I think Justin Fields jumps up to number one.
All right, I got 45 seconds
Sure
to
do.
work in a quick one here. Xavier McKinney out of Roswell. Don't think Georgia gets him. I think he's probably bound for Clemson, but I just don't see Georgia winning out in the end. D'Angelo Gibbs was the other question I got. I got 30 seconds to talk about D'Angelo.
Go for it.
I would not have liked Georgia's chances unless he made the trip last Sunday, which he ended up doing. He came down with his dad, his mom, his whole family was here, and he had a chance to kind of sit down, go through the indoor practice facility, get to experience all of that. It was a key visit for him and his family. I still like Georgia there.
You still have 5 seconds.
And I think it's going to be a wild December. That's what I'll say.
Exactly. And, guys, stick with us. We got our last segment of the 2016 season for DawgDial. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGASports.com. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Meharry, joined by my co-hosts, Jake Roos and Dave McMahon of UGASports.com. And our loyal listeners know that that song that you just heard indicates that this is the last segment of this week's show. And, guys, incredible show just for the entire season. We're wrapping it up here. This is the last segment for 2016 before we're back on the air January 10th.
Been great to have the trio.
Yes.
Here. I think we've had a lot of fun.
We sure have. Yeah. And, guys, something that was brought up to our attention in the break, the indoor practice facility, the long-awaited indoor practice facility, is going to be opening their doors. Might even be open before we're back on the air January 10th, probably after that. It's going to be open just in time, though, before that first Wednesday in February, I bet, National Signing Day. They're going to want to bring some recruits through there. Dave, you've kind of seen the outside of it. How big is this thing for people that haven't seen it?
It's gigantic. Obviously, it's a real football field, unlike the one they had sort of previous to this,
whatever
which
they
was
called that.
a 50, 60-yard field, which was a multi-purpose room. I kind of think this one's a little bit better. I mean, it has the full 100 yards. I mean, it looks good. They showed pictures of it online. They showed videos of online. And I mean, it looks better than any practice facility I've ever seen.
And, Jake, I know with recruiting coming up, I know that they've shown these kids the indoor practice facility already. What's it going to change, though, with it? I'm sure, like I said, they're going to want to get that open before that last weekend and just say, come on down, come look at it in all of its glory.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the expectation in college football now.
Yeah.
And it's something that fans have been railing against for a long time. This idea of Georgia having practices rained out, or maybe you got to go to the Falcons facility.
Go to the softball field.
Yeah, go to whatever you got to do. It's over. It's done. It's going to be a key component. It's one of the newest ones in the nation, and you can bet that it's going to have all the bells and whistles. I guarantee you that. And that's what recruits want to see. I mean, for better or for worse, I know people have problems with things like that, but that's just the nature of the game.
That is what 18-year-old kids look for. I mean, they obviously look for other stuff too, but I mean, 18-year-old kids love that things. I mean, it's been a while since I was an 18-year-old kid, so maybe that's why I don't think why is that it matters, but for an 18-year-old kid, it does matter.
Absolutely.
Guys, wrapping up, though, real quick, what's one thing that stuck out to you throughout the entire season? Was it a play? Was it a game? What was one thing that, whether it was a turning point, whether it was a high moment for Georgia or a low moment for Georgia, what's something that stuck out to you, Jake? I'm going to ask you the same question, Dave, that I guess implemented the entire season into one play?
Wow, way to put me into back me into a corner here. I think the one that I would probably point to is the Auburn game. I think for Georgia to come out and win that game, they just had to have it. And realistically, if you hadn't won it, it was going to be a situation where things were pretty dire by the end of the year. And I'm not saying that people were happy by the end, but you had to win a rivalry game. You got manhandled by Florida. Georgia Tech obviously didn't go your direction. You lost a game to Vanderbilt that you never expected. That Auburn win, that was a number 9 team in the nation. Yes, they were without their best player, but you know they still have all those weapons, and I think for Georgia to do that at home, it was a good sign.
That second half was incredible. The defense they did not allow a single first down was.
What was your point of the season?
I mean that was the best part of the year. Like the worst part, I mean, the Tech was, and so was Vanderbilt. But I mean that Hail Mary pass against Tennessee was the worst thing that I've seen in a while. Just because how high the highs were just seconds earlier, and then how low the lows were, and that was very pressuring me. But I want to end it on a higher note. Auburn. The Auburn game was better.
I think the thing for me was Tennessee. It just kind of snowballed everything into the wrong direction, and you saw after the game. I know I did. I was down there interviewing the players. The drainage out of them, they lost out of that game. I don't know if they were ever able to recoup that, and you saw it play in throughout the entire season. But guys, just like Kirby Smart in his first year, us as a trio, our first year, I think we did a little better than 7-5.
Yeah, I'm gonna give us. We were a solid 9-3.
Oh,
and
easy.
I think in 2017 we're only gonna make bigger strides.
Yeah.
That's what Dog Nation expects, and that's what DawgDial's delivering.
I mean, I think we could maybe compare us. Like, I mean, we think of good rock trios, like maybe even Rush or so, or maybe like ZZ Top, since two of the guys have beard.
I like to think of us as Kiss because we've got the hidden weapon in John Rawls. So he's our Ace Frehley.
There you go.
He's the unsung hero of the whole
Space
production.
Age. There you go.
And guys, I just want to say thank you to John Rawl, our executive producer, to Josh and Amy Collins, Champy's Chicken, and Jake Roos, Dave McMahon. I'm Paul Meharry signing off for the 2016 year. We'll be back January 10th. Make sure you bring your toys for tots.
Come get some chicken.
Yes.
Champies, we
Do it
love
all.
you. We'll see you in January.
You've been listening to DawgDial, presented by UGASports.com.